Hello and welcome to the Fishing Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things fishing, gear, tactics, venues, and of course the fish we catch. I'm Liam Hall.
And I'm Matt Jones.
Right, so we're here again for another episode of the Fishing Podcast.
We are. So kicking off, as we always do. How are you?
I'm good. I'm all right, actually. Yeah, the day's been good. I managed to get to the tackle shop today as well, which was good fun.
This is exciting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know any of this. I don't know any of
we
purchases, so we've got a bit to chat through a little bit at the start, which
we
is
have
nice.
to try and be careful, don't we? Because if we talk about things, because I get excited when I buy new things, and my first thing I want to do is ring you and be like, you never guess what I've just bought. But I don't want to talk through it with you, because then when we come here, we have to then try and feign it, or we've got nothing to talk about. So, yeah, been to the tackle shop today.
Nice.
Obviously work. For us, it's a Wednesday. And, so it's been a pretty decent day so far. How about you?
Nice. Sorry, I feel a yawn coming, so just bear with me.
You love it. Why do you always start yawning when we do this?
It's an oxygen thing. I'm just lacking oxygen. Yeah, I've been good. Sorry, I've drawn a blank. I unfortunately haven't been down to the tackle shop. I've been doing a lot of my purchases online. So there's still purchases coming, but yeah, unfortunately not been there. There's always something nice about going to the tackle shop. I get quite excited about going.
See, I got really lucky today because the thing that I bought in the tackle shop, to be honest, the reason why I think I just pulled the trigger is because it's been in my basket on both Angling Direct and the Total Fishing Tackle.
Oh, yeah.
I've been fretting with it I've been umming and ahhing about which one. And then I was in the tackle shop and it's a bit of a rogue one to be there, but it was there. And I was like, no way. So I was like, right.
Were they, so I don't know what you've brought, but both of the things that you were looking at, the toying between, were both of them in the tackle shop or was just one of them in there?
Later on, watch this space. We'll chat.
Fine.
Well, we'll do like a little purchases at the end and I will talk through what it is. What do I just talk about now?
All right, just go for it now.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear it.
Okay.
We don't need to wait to the end. We've got questions to answer, topics to discuss at the end. So I want to hear about them now.
So I have purchased today a brand new retainer sling.
Wow.
Exciting stuff.
Okay, that's big.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about
from
it.
the tackle shop as well.
I know.
What, you mean our local?
Yeah. Genuinely.
What?
Bizarre.
Okay.
Really bizarre. And even more bizarre when you find out which one it is.
Okay.
So the one I have at the moment has done us well. It's done me well up until this point. However, there's three flaws with it, which have been like a problem up until now for me. One of which it has a rigid straight bottom.
Yeah.
Which I always feel a bit guilty about. Whenever you
end up creating a lovely little slip and slide for them to go down one end.
Yeah, and I feel really guilty about that. Yeah, just completely pushed its face against its tail against, and I don't like doing that.
Yeah, that's fair.
2, it doesn't have a zip top or closed top. Yeah. It has a Velcro top, but there is a good, few inch play, and also as well, a big old fish if it wants to get out of it, it's not a Velcro, it's not holding it.
No.
Also, it doesn't have a rope attachment sort of like attach it to the bank side. Also, the material is that sort of like vinyl material that I think overall, like when it's in the sun and it ages, it will crack, which I don't think is good either.
No.
And it doesn't, the netting doesn't dry as fast or something like that. So I've been toying with a lot of different slings for ages now. Obviously, you've got all of the different, there's loads of different brands that do slings, like Nash do quite a few decent ones. You've got like, is it Tracker? They do quite a few decent ones as well. There's loads of contenders. However, Korda
you're joking. See, I was just about to say, Korda have just brought out one.
Have just released their brand new compact retainer slings, which are all bells and whistles. They have the zip along the side top. It's like a really lovely mesh. It has the dip in the bottom. It's got a little clip that holds the two zips together. It's got the rope cord. It's got everything. And I walked into the tackle shop, and that's the one I've been playing with for a while. But it's probably it's one of the most expensive slings that are out there. It's about 70 quid. And I've been umming and ahhing because like there's an NGT one, for example, which on Angling Direct at the moment is 25 quid. And it, for the most part, does the same as this one. But it's not quite as good as nice. So I've been umming and ahhing if it's worthwhile. Thought about it. Walked into our local, and literally just on the side on a shelf they just had it, and I was like, what? But they have it in two. They have the olive and then the camo one.
Yeah.
Obviously,
of course, you went for the camo one.
Went olive.
You what?
Everything I have is olive, isn't it? So I have bags. I have rod bag, tackle bag, all as part of the the compact range, as well as my my scales pouch. Everything is the olive thing. So I've set my stall out. I'm an olive geezer now.
Fair enough.
So yeah, I've gone for the olive one. My bivvy's olive. I've not really got any camo DPM stuff. So
wow.
I've gone for the olive one, and it was there. So I bought that. I also bought some bank stick, distance sticks.
Okay.
Some proper distance sticks.
Not the Korda ones as well.
Korda ones, yeah.
Korda distance sticks. Wow.
But they are the basics ones, which aren't as crazy as the other ones. So yeah, it's so exciting. I also got some new hooks, just some new cranks, 4s and 6s.
Nice, the usual. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're my big new purchases.
Man's been splashing out.
Well, I was excited.
Yeah. Double Korda gear.
I don't like it, but they do make. You can't argue with the
quality of it.
It's just such great gear.
When you just look at the item and the cost, you will question it. But when you actually buy something and you have it, they are so much better.
Yeah, I've really gone all in on like the Korda compact stuff. As I said, like my rod bag's Korda compact. I've got like the bank sticks Korda compact bag, which I've been using. I've got the actual rod bag, my actual tackle bag, weigh bag, scales bag, and it's all the same color. It's all that like sand desert sort of olive style one. Yeah. I just really like it. It's really great quality. Also, the people that are designing it are really just thinking about the angler, aren't they?
Well, it's making everything like modular, and everything fits into everything so well. It's all got its spot, which is all we could ever ask for, considering the amount of stuff we take fishing.
Yeah, and it already comes with a stink bag, like in terms of it goes in.
Oh yeah,
so
nice.
You haven't got to have one separately or anything like that. So yeah, nice. An exciting purchase that I'm quite pleased with.
Yeah, that's exciting. That is. So I've also dipped into the compact thing a little bit.
Yeah.
As you know, I brought a bait boat a while ago.
You have.
And unfortunately, I was rather riskily
just carrying it around,
recklessly. And yeah, the bait boat that I've got is only just come on the market, so they don't have any bags for them at all at the moment, which was a bit annoying. But I've been hunting around for one, and I saw on a Facebook group that someone recommended the Korda 45 litre backpack for this bait boat, and I was like, is it just going to be one of those things that like you just slam a bait boat in a backpack and
it can go in any bag,
and it just, it's loosely rattling around in there and that kind of stuff. And I went into the tackle shop and had a look at it, and I was like, actually it's the perfect size. And I literally I like got all of the dimensions of my bait boat up and looked at the dimensions of the bag on the back, and I was like, it's almost bang on. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to buy one and I'm going to try it, and if I don't like it, I'll take it back. And like, they're quite expensive. The backpack's like 80 quid or something, but I mean, as you know, with your bait boat bag, you spent a fortune on it, and it's just, you're protecting something that is 10 times the amount of money anyway. So, it's worth spending it. And yeah, I got it, and it fits perfectly. It's literally like a glove, and it was almost like it was made for it. It's really strange, and it's the same thing where it's got the little compact kind of pouches on either side and stuff as well. But the bait boat just fits so seamlessly on the inside. So I was like, nice.
It's important to get a decent bag for them because, as you said, it's so expensive. So getting something that's going to like fit well in it and protect it, and also as well, you get the added pouches on the side. So it's like you can just replace. In a way, you can replace, another bag where you can just put things in the side of it, or just free up more room in your tackle bag. Yeah. So some exciting purchases from the both of us.
We've had a lot.
I'll tell you one other purchase that I've made recently. I bought some new bottom baits.
Okay, yeah.
So it's no secret. Well, it is a secret. Well, it's not. That pink is a pretty...
It's a winner.
Well, for me, pink as a bottom bait is a colour that I've had a lot of faith in for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I went out and I picked up some of the new Isofish pink dumbbells. A little bit inspired by the recent Korda underwater film they put out from Norton Disney.
Lovely segue.
Nice segue. Topic of the week, bells were ringing off, is what we're going to discuss today. We're going to do a bit of our thoughts, takeaways, learnings, reactions to that video, and I guess anything sort of specifically on the underwater videos, because there's quite a few that have come out, like is it Sipography?
They've done one.
Korda have of course been doing them for years now.
One More Cast, I think, have done a few. I think this was kind of how they released their rather controversial Magic Twig. You know, they did a lot of underwater filming with that as well. So it's becoming a thing. Like, lots of people are doing it.
Yeah, I've seen, just really quickly on that one, I've seen loads of videos, and I don't want to set my stall out because I'm fully open to, you know, new designs and new things coming out. But on the underwater for the OMC, the Twig, I've seen loads of videos come out on Instagram recently for that. Every single video where it hooks the carp using the twig, I've watched, the twig never deploys in any of the videos.
Yeah, well, at least you can't see it clearly deploying at all.
You can see the twig and it just stays straight. The carp is hooked every single time. I personally think...
Do you think... Sorry, so do you mean like when the fish hooks itself, the pressure the fish is putting on the lead is greater than what the twig is pulling back on?
So how the twig looks when it deploys is it's like a straight thing like this, and it has two things either side of it.
The prongs.
And the idea is that it goes bump and it clicks out, thus pulling the hook into the... In every single video they release, the twig doesn't do that when it hooks the carp. And I don't know if people are just not noticing this or like...
That's interesting.
Honestly, watch any, and it never does that. Obviously, once you've played the fish for a while, it comes in like this.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But I personally think it's the equivalent of just basically using a 6 ounce lead, because you've got 2.5 ounces or however much the twig weighs and your 2.5 ounce lead. You're basically just utilizing a 5 ounce lead, because the heavier the lead, the more chance you've got of hooking a fish. So I think there's probably something in that just in general. But anyway, I just thought an interesting one that they show all these videos, but I've never actually seen it deploy. So I don't know if that's...
I don't know, but I think that's what makes these underwater films quite good, is you're really seeing these rigs in action and what they can actually do. Because there's just, you walk into a tackle shop and you just see a wall just filled with different like leads, lead clips, heli rigs, like you name it. There's just endless amounts of them. And where do you start? Where do you actually sit there and go, I'm going to use that, like that's going to be my chosen thing? Like obviously, you know, most fishermen tend to have 3 or 4 in their arsenal that they'll use depending on the lake, whether it's weedy, whether it's solid or whatever. But even then, there's like 3 or 4 variations of lead clips and different brands that do the same thing, and you just don't know what to use. And these videos are actually quite useful to actually working out, well, you know, how do they all perform? What's the difference? How do the fish act? And that kind of stuff, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like, I think going forwards, there's almost an argument for any rig that comes out, you should be able to go. For example, in bass fishing in America, it's really commonplace to go, okay, here's a lure. Okay, brilliant. Nice. There's 1,000 lures, but you can go, right, okay, well, we've got a tank of bass in our Bass Pro shop, and you can cast it out and you can see how it swims, how it moves. You can see the effectiveness of it. And if our fish are going to go for it, there right now. And it's like, you can't, there is no translation to, this is, I guess, if anything, the translation in carp fishing to the demonstration of that lure. And I think, there should be a way where you can kind of show the mechanics of how it works, because the idea is it's all just very much like just, you know, you're thinking this might work. There's a lot of like trial and error, and that's where I think it's really useful. So going sort of specifically into this one, the most recent one, so it's at Norton Disney on Turner's Lake, I think, and it's Danny Fairbrass and Tom Stokes. So
firstly, I'm going to say top notch on the quality.
Oh, it's amazing.
Korda generally have taken just like carp films, fishing films, and specifically the underwater, because I think they were the kind of pioneers of that when it first came out.
They absolutely were.
You know, they've just taken the quality to the next level, you know, to the extent now where, I mean, it's a 2-hour film, this one that they've just released. Like, and the thing is, it's hard to make, like, as a filmmaker myself, it's hard to make a 2-hour film engaging from start to finish and have a solid amount of information in there without it feeling drawn out and really boring at some points. And they've done a really good job in producing it. So I give credit to them there. It's nuts.
I think on the flip side of that, it would have been very easy to surmise it into a 25-minute video, like genuinely, or a 40-minute, and kind of go, right, well, let's really lean into like the YouTube algorithm, and let's kind of make it a bit shorter or something like that. But I think having that, you know, that length of, 2 hours is just putting all the cards on the table. It is showing all of the pickups, all of the takes, because that is where the value in these videos is seeing the time and time again, how the rigs perform or don't perform, and how the colours perform or don't perform. And with just a really short condensed, you're not going to get that, and you do get a sense of, you know, how long they've been there for, and I think that's the importance. But I think, it was really, quality was like incredible, and that's also, it goes into the actual, like the footage of the camera underwater as well, because being able to actually see how things work properly is massive.
It's developed so far since their first ones, because I think when you look at just the quality of that angle and the underwater camera, I think they originally had something that they weighed down on the lake bed and stuff, but you often got kind of situations where the lens would get covered in stuff or it'd get muck on it or whatever, and they always had to go out and clean it and whatnot. And I think now they've gotten to a point where they've got like little wipers on the front of them where it like cleans the lens, or cleans at least the casing of the lens, you know, so that they can just keep filming without having to always go back out and disturb the water and that kind of stuff. So yeah, the tech's progressed a lot.
It'd be interesting to know what rig they're using. I'm guessing it's like a camera with like a dive housing or something on it. That would
something like that. Yeah, I'm familiar with like their tent setup. Basically, how all of the cables come from that camera into their tent and how they're recording everything. I've seen all of that. It's the same as how we work in live broadcast. But the actual camera itself under the water, that's totally new. And I'm like, what on earth is that? Is it a DSLR that they've, you know, cased up and put a PTZ head on it that's all completely waterproof, or is it a bespoke diving camera? I don't know. It's a really unique thing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But I think in terms of like thoughts on it, initially for me, like super positive. I think like it's brilliant to have that influence on the gear and seeing what you're using. I think like fair play and credit to like Danny Fairbrass for like putting his tackle on display. Like there's, you know, you see some people say like, oh, it's just an advertisement for like the gear, and it's like, yeah, fair play, you know, if you're putting that much effort into it, advertise your gear. But at the same time, on the flip side, it's putting your gear on like under the spotlight, and it's putting things really on a pedestal of, right, okay, let's see if it works or not. And it goes both ways, because, you know, as you see, some things work better than others. So I think there's definitely like a amount of credit to just kind of putting it through that testing. But yeah, I think I gained a lot. I think there's a lot of things, if anything, what it does is it confirms a lot of what you sort of, you know, what you sort of want to try and assume with colours and rigs. You sort of, there's a lot of, you know, what word am I looking for? I can't get the word. When you hypothesize, when you're guessing. What word is it? No, 1 minute. Doesn't matter. There's there's a lot of sort of like okay. Yeah, because there's a lot of guesswork effectively into what, you know, putting those rigs out there. And it confirms things. It confirms, oh yeah, we sort of assumed that a shorter hook length would do X, or we assumed that these colours would do Y. And it confirms it, because, you know, there are definitely some learnings where it's completely new, but if anything, it just kind of gives you that sort of confidence as well.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things that like I was quite impressed by. Was, I think, yeah, you know, you're right in the fact that like Korda generally are quite happy to put their stuff out there, and they're not scared for things to not work, because you know, ultimately their angle is in, okay, well, let's try this instead. And that is half of what fishing is trying to crack it, trying to work out what's working and not working at any given time. I don't believe that there is one single rig to rule them all, because I think every lake is different, every fish is different, every lake bed is different. There's far too many parameters to have one thing to rule them all. But the one thing that, certainly from when kind of Danny was fishing at the first part of the episode, and then when Tom took over, you saw two very different fishing techniques of Danny predominantly using like inline leads and kind of going for shorter hook lengths and trying to hook them that way. But then Tom Stokes went heli rigs, and they were both fishing exactly the same spot, the same things, and they were both catching. So they both clearly work, but in terms of kind of the record of what was performing the most, it varied across both of them. Like, and I think that come down to colours, you know, hook, you know, kind of hook length, you know, all the way through to the colours of bait that they were using and how much bait they were putting in. You know, it kind of showed a real variety of stuff. Yeah,
I think also though, like, I can't help but feel whenever I watch any of these underwater things, there is just an element of like just fishing. There is just so much luck in No, let me take that back, because there is clearly I think at some point there will be some kind of rig which is developed that will genuinely really prove a huge sort of uptake in conversions to, hook and fish. And I think these things will help to find it, but it does also highlight the variables it does feel like luck, where I think luck is the wrong word. It just highlights the variables of what can go wrong and how sometimes perfect the conditions need to be to hook the fish. And also, the value in leaving a rig out there sometimes, because, for example, you saw some of these rigs perform and effectively they would have, a fish would have spat the hook 6 times and then it hooks itself. And it's like, if you knew every single time you got spat, you were to, sort of cast back in and try something new, you would always you'd be fly fishing. But on the 7th, it takes and you're there and you think, oh, brilliant. So yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons in terms of like understanding you need to leave the hook and the bait there to do its job. But at the same time, there are definitely things you can change which will help to improve your chances of converting those pickups.
You're not gonna hook every fish. That's just not realistic. But I think, like if you turned up to a lake and you threw a rig out and you saw that, kind of over the course of an hour, it got ejected 6-7 times, but then on the 59th minute of that hour, you caught one, you consider that a success. The rods have been out an hour and I've had one. That's a really good, a really good session. But, in a normal circumstance, you don't know it's just been ejected 6, 7, 8, 9 times. So,
I don't think I want to know.
No, neither do I, to be fair. I think that would just, give me serious heartbreak. But, kind of, it's purely just understanding, that it's not going to happen every time. It's the acceptance of that. And that's part of the luck. That's part of, kind of fishing. But I think as well, one of the other things that I thought was really interesting was the angle of which the fish come over the rig to take the bait played a huge part. So if you had your rig out there and, kind of all of your line was facing literally straight to the fish and it come dead towards it, kind of you may have less chance of hooking it that way because actually everything's dead straight. But then if a fish comes from behind and then, takes the bait from behind the lead, it's actually coming back in on itself. Is that going to play more of a part? And is the hook going to flip over? Like it was clearly different for every fish they caught based on the angle that the fish actually come at it.
Yeah, because the other thing as well is, how does that affect if I'm casting towards an island and the fish only has 3 ways realistically that it can come at it? Does that affect the chance of me hooking it? Does that change if I'm fishing towards an island? Okay, then I need to fish with something that is going to minimize the fact that it can't move, it can't come one way, for example. And I think that's the hook length thing as well, because, for example, when you're using a longer hook length, it really highlighted the fact that effectively, the amount of time it takes for the fish to come in contact with the lead to hook itself is increased because it's got, 7 inches that it's got to sort of, I guess, effectively take off the ground before it becomes in contact with the lead versus 3 inches. And I think because it's always that eternal battle of how much you can shorten the hook length, and make something as supple, but at the same time, it's going to reset. So it's kind of working out that Goldilocks point, isn't it, really? And kind of, I think these things will help, people who are designing tackle move towards more of that kind of Goldilocks sort of outcome when it comes to designing those rigs. And colours was so important as well. That's something that people talk a lot about, and it's sort of like, if anything, it becomes more of a preference. I think it's, whatever you've got the most amount of confidence to leave on a spot for long enough is kind of how I've sort of often thought about it. But there was definitely sort of a preference, well, at least what it looked like, there was a preference to pink. And that's because they can see them better, or they're just on those lakes, they prefer pink, or maybe they've seen yellow too many times, they're put off it, like who knows. But yeah, definitely like it's the importance on trying different colours. And different colours on different spots, not the underwater, but there was another video I saw, which was Spooner on the Pump House Lake, I think it's called. It was a mainline video. And something
Is this when they were testing the Isofish bait?
They're talking about the Isofish baits, but something he said, which I thought was quite valid, is not just changing the colours, but for example, if you're catching on one spot on pink, put pink on the other spot and put yellow on the spot you're catching on. If you catch on the yellow, it's the spot, not the colour. If you catch on the pink, it's the colour on the spot. And I thought that was really valid. And that's something that you can take away from, you can sort of merge with the underwater as well as that. But yeah, I think colour is really important as well.
Yeah, there was another video that I watched that kind of highlighted colour a little bit for me, which was Daryl Peck's video recently. Parallel Deck.
I thought you have to think about saying it.
Yeah, I was about to say Parallel Deck. If Parallel Deck, if you're there, we refer to you as Parallel Deck, just like Dom Tov and
Fanny Debras.
So apologies to you all, but that's how we refer to you.
Do you know who we've never done?
Yeah, I know.
Seal Nuna. No, that's not even right, is it? Because it'd be Napuna, wouldn't it? Seal Napuna. Oh, God. Ridiculous.
Seal Napuna. I'm sorry, Neil. That's a bad one. You got the short end of the straw there. It was Parallel Decks. Kind of recent day ticket video that he did. And I think he did like 1 day ticket at Norton Disney. No, sorry, 1 day ticket at Linear, and then went and did 1 day ticket at Norton Disney, I think. And one of the things he touched on in there was different colours at different times of year. So one of the things,
being in spring, for example.
Yeah. So for example, pink during the spring, but now during this time of year when it's kind of the peak of summer, just go match the hatch, go lighter coloured baits because they've got their heads down and they're feeding and that kind of stuff. And kind of in a recent session that I had, I was using a lot of lighter baits and I had a lot of success on it. I stopped using pink for that session. I didn't use them at all. And normally I have so much confidence in pink, but I had a lot of success that session. So it kind of swings and roundabouts. I think there's like a lot of trying to put the puzzle pieces together and realise how does your lake take to certain colours, because it's not going to be the same for every lake. But how does your lake do that? Is it light colours during the summer, bright colours during the winter, during the spring? I don't know. Like that's part of the challenge, is to work it out. But
yeah, and I think with the underwater thing as well, like it kind of forces you to try different things, and I think that's where a lot of people fall down, is they become so married to this rig that caught them, their best fish. And for example, like Danny mentions it in the video, like Tom Stokes caught the Burfield Common, like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, of course he does.
And like if you hook the Burfield Common on a rig and a colour, it's going to be really hard to not use that everywhere you go.
If I was him, I'd be using that everywhere from this point. If it can catch that, it's going to catch anything, and that is generally the rule. But that doesn't mean it's going to perform or outperform everything else on every lake. Of course not.
And I think that's the value, because he goes on to sort of highlight, like, I would have changed something sooner. Danny says, like, I would have changed to something where, like an inline or, a leg clip system.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like, but it is kind of trying to move away from what you have confidence in. We're a superstitious bunch, or should I say, we're stitious.
We're stitious.
Yeah. I'm a little stitious, not superstitious, as Michael Scott said. But yeah, we're super superstitious to the point where, people will put cuddly toys or ornaments on their rods to increase the chance of catching because they caught on it before. It's the luck thing, so trying to convince someone to change their entire rig setup that they have so much confidence in is massive, but it showcases that it is working toward that trial and error point, because they do eventually move towards a system that I've personally never seen, which is putting a shot on the end of a hair on the hook to increase the chance of hooking a fish on the rig, which I think was made popular by someone, which is bizarre, but not something I would ever have done. And they work toward that by understanding that they need something that is putting the fish in contact with the lead faster, something that is turning far more aggressively, using a straighter hook edge, and using pink. And then I think they got to a point where they were converting fish so much quicker. And it was from that constantly trial and error and changing. But yeah, so I think there's a huge amount of importance in changing what you're doing, and I guess seeing your rig not work in certain situations is what's going to give you the confidence to actually do that. And the only way you're going to see that is by having these underwater. And you have to assume that if you're using the same rig, then it's going to behave in near enough the same sort of way in your fishing as well. So I think there's definitely learnings to take from it. And something as well, I think, like Tom says, like certain rigs are big fish rigs, and I think there's also an element in that, like thinking about the type of fish you're fishing for. It's not just a case of the lake bed, it's the size of the fish. It's to consider, certain rigs will perform better with certain fish. It gives you so much to think about.
What did you think about towards the tail end, they put a lot of emphasis on this kind of like new hook lead or hook shot that they had on the end.
I think it's old, isn't it? Is that not something?
Well, I think it's centered around. It might be a new Korda product, but the concept of a shot on the hook is like I believe is quite old, but it's not. It's certainly not in modern day fishing. But it kind of makes the hook literally like sit up on an end. It's not as high as a pop up. It sits like hook point down, but it's like up on end, so that if a fish sucks it in, the point is already pointing down. So as soon as it ejects, it's got a greater chance of hooking.
I think again, kind of going back to one of the points that I mentioned at the beginning, I am a firm believer that effectively the more weight you can put into the rig around the hook whilst keeping it balanced is going to help. Ultimately, if you've got something that's really light, it's got far less chance of hooking, just from like a physics standpoint.
Yeah.
If something's incredibly light, it's far less likely to, go into the fish's mouth. If something's heavier, it's the lead that's pulling it. It's that pulling motion.
You want it to run out of the fish's mouth rather than be blown out.
Yeah, so and the lighter something is, the more chance it's got of being blown out. So the second you're increasing things like weights and lead shots and heavy leads or things to the bottom, I think you are going to increase the chance of hooking a fish. It's that kind of nothing is free. There's that give and take. So, having more weight on the end, if, for example, if you've got a hair with a shot on the end, does that, start to increase, how obvious it is? One, to the fish, there's an argument there. Will it put them off going for it? Two, it's something else it's something else to go wrong. There's not huge amounts of room for error, but there's definitely the opportunity for it to wrap around the hook, in certain situations. There's the chance, who knows, that the shot can get kind of caught underneath the hook and that might cause a hook pull. There's just so many different things.
Yep.
The more components you add to something, the more chance you've got it going wrong. But it's a risk over reward. Is the amount of reward and the amount of hook hold that it might give you worth the potentials that it doesn't? So I think that's kind of the thing, really.
Yeah, no, I do completely agree with that. I think the other thing that was really interesting that actually kind of I found the most valuable was actually less about the underwater stuff. It was the scene where Tom Stokes caught, but it got snagged, and I think it got wrapped around the camera. And he obviously went in a boat, which not everyone's got that luxury, but he went out in the boat and he hooked the line beyond where it was snagged, picked it back up, cut the line with the fish still on the end, and then retied it to Danny's rod, and then wound it back onto his reel, and then carried on playing the fish. So he completely threw his rod out the window, was like, that's gone, that's all snagged down there, I'm just going to leave that for a minute. But used Danny's rods to literally just end-to-end 2 main lines, just tie the 2 together, and then start playing on another rod. That takes some balls.
It takes
because
balls.
If you've got a 30-pound fish on the end of your line, if I said to you, Liam, I'm about to bite your line and I'm going to retie it to the end of my rod so that you can sit, that's hard. You've got to do a double knotless knot.
Yeah, huge respect for having that one under pressure to think of doing that.
Oh, that's what I mean. I didn't even think. I would have stood there like an absolute melon, going like, I'm snagged and there's nothing I can do, and I'm going to lose this fish, and I'm just going to start feeling sorry for myself now. That's what I would have done
to execute on that. But also, how do you take that into your own fishing? Because in theory, like if you are in that situation where you've got line going into a set of pads, if you can pick up the second set of line, go in your waders, and do the same thing, you might increase the chance of catching the fish. You
might land it. You just don't know. But I think it's that little technique.
It's like, a bit rogue.
It's rogue, and I very doubt it's going to happen at some point because we don't really use boats in our fishing. But if ever I'm in a situation where I'm like, the fish is over there, but the line is here, and I've got a chance to take that line beyond the snag and reattach it, I now know that's an option. And for some reason, I'd never thought about doing it before.
Yeah, and he had the fishery owner with him, so there's no sort of qualms there as to whether he's allowed to or not. Because there's an argument that some people might be like, but I guess, I think it's good. You might leave some line in the water though. But
well, no, because I think he did get all of it out.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, I think the only reason why he couldn't untangle it was because it was a fish on one end and he was tugging at the other.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think once he cut the line, it was just free to reel in.
Yeah, I mean, but give him a bit too much credit. He did tie one rod to the other rod first, and then had to retie one rod to the other bit of line.
That's very true. That's very true.
Clearly not quite so calm and composed. But not that saying I would have done any better.
No, 100%. So yeah, I thought overall, like it was a Very, very good episode. They've upped the quality again, like to another level.
And the learnings as well. I think you definitely learn, before there was sort of some top level stuff, whereas now I think it's starting to become a lot more in depth in terms of like the takeaways. And that's just due to the amount of effort and production that goes into it as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, they put a lot of time, effort, and money into making them. Like the setup there, you can just tell just by like the little tent they've got, kind of with all of their monitors and whatnot, and the way that they're recording the cameras. Like it's nuts. They're literally live logging. Are you familiar with live logging? Like, it's literally during fixed rig setup of the TV.
Well, that's because you've got how many hours you need to know where to go back.
They're filming a week solid worth of underwater filming. Like they're literally making notes of, X fish has just swum through and done this, or picked up the rig and dropped it at this angle, so that they can all. I mean, I don't know if this happens, but I'm sure that Danny takes all of this stuff away, throws it to the development team, and says, "Here's all the footage. Watch it. Come back to me with new innovations that you think would help."
So. Right. So before we move off this topic, I do want to ask you one very brief, quick question.
Lay it on me.
If you were to do an underwater and you were to go in with the same sort of premise or ideas, is there anything you would do different or implement on the next one?
Is there anything I would do different? It's tough because there is a such thing as overproducing and going too far with it, and then it becomes counterproductive because you've got far too much footage and you've got far too much to work with, in which case it stops becoming entertaining and stops becoming kind of useful to people. I think the level that they've produced it now is a good level. The only real up that I can see, that if I was doing it, that I'd consider, is trying to go multi-camera underwater, is trying to have 2 cameras, 3 cameras on the same spot, so that you can try and understand where the fish are coming from, look at the same moment but multiple times with replays to understand, okay, how did it look from that angle versus that angle? How did the fish swim in? How did its head go down? You can almost analyze those moments a little bit more. Like it's almost like I work in sport. So, kind of when I'm analyzing football, for example, the way that we do it is we literally get 5, 6, 7 angles of the same moment, and we just go through every angle and we talk about it from different perspectives and what did they see and how did it look over here versus there, and like you can break it down a lot more. That would be quite useful, but that's not necessarily a fundamental change to like how they're already doing it, because actually I think the standard of what they've got is so good. And like they do it in such a way where they're almost telling you how they're doing it, but also what they're learning along the way. But you've got your own kind of your own interpretation of it as you go. So I think like editorially they've banged it. I think kind of production wise, the only thing I'd say is add more underwater cameras, but that's money, and that's potentially something to scare the fish away as well. Just the fish swim into the Big Brother house. That's basically what you've done.
This week in the Big Brother house.
This week on Turner's Lake. So other than that, that's pretty much like what I would do. So what about you? What would you say?
There's one thing that I would like to see as opposed to change. I think it's more just a different approach that I would think would do really well. And I think what it would be to basically have like the top 5, 10 big hitters in terms of rigs. So the inline, solid bag, hinge stiff, chod, helicopter, lead clip, and get these different rigs and go, right, we have 14 days and 7 rigs. Each rig gets 2 days on the spot. And you literally sit there and you go, right, the inline lead has had its 2 days. It's not about catching, it's about seeing how the different rigs perform.
Yeah, it's about the ratio of catching.
Yeah, consistent with the same bait, choose it. The pink works, put a pink on it. And that is all you do. Because then at the end of those 14 days, you should have some metrics where you can go, right, because you're not necessarily going to guarantee that, every single day X is going to have, they're all going to have the same amount of takes or pickups. However, what you can probably start to do is, say, for example, they each get 10, at least. You could go, right, okay, well, the lead clip, it converted 3 of 10. Yeah. The helicopter converted 6 of 10. And then you can maybe start to build some data as to, on a clear spot, how these different ones perform and rank against each other. Because then you could almost get to a point where in the future, in an ideal world, you could literally go, right, okay, we've done this on weedy lakes, we've done this on clear bottoms, we've done this on, gravel, clay, silty bottoms, with each one of these 7 rigs. And you could have like a rating system. You could say, right, out of 100 fish on a clay bottom, this rig did X. Out of 100, pickups on this rig did X. And you could kind of have like a bit of a gauge almost. It would be a lot of work, but in an ideal world, like to be able to walk into a tackle shop and go, right, I'm fishing a weedy lake. You spoke about at the beginning, like, how do we know what to do?
Yep.
What a great bit of data to have to go, right, okay, well, on a gravel spot, this rig versus this rig, this one got 60 pickups, this got 40. It's like top trumps of rigs. You can go, right, okay, well, on a weedy bottom, this does X. Okay, it's not as quite good in a clear bottom, so I won't, you can kind of work it out and balance out what comes. So I think from what they're doing, I think that would be a really cool bit of data to see.
So you're proposing a structural change slightly, and an editorial change on how they build the film rather than anything else. I
think it would be a nice thick, because ultimately, where do you go, doing this in the future? You do just sort of keep trying different rigs, but there's a bit of a variable as to, let's just put this in for 3 days and let's change it. I think
see how it performs based on your fishing.
So kind of go at this from a really boring data statistics perspective. Every single rig needs to have the same amount of time on a lake bed. Even if it means, okay, well, you wait. You could take it one step further and you could go, right, okay, that rig stays out until it's had 20 pickups. And then you move on to the next one. On its 20th pickup, you reel it in, next rig out. Because then you can quantify per 20 pickups, this is how many conversions, and you could do that enough where you could really start to try to hone in what's the most effective. It's a lot of work, but someone's got to do it. Maybe we could do it. But
get your lab coat out, mate.
Yeah, I know. Doing it. I'm coming for you. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would think.
Okay.
I think it would be a good idea to do. So
nice. Okay. Well, I think that kind of nicely concludes.
Covers off the
kind of our key takeaways from this episode. If you'd like to hear us talk about any other kind of videos or news or anything like that, then drop it in the chat, drop it in the comments. Also, I just throw in, if you haven't listened or watched any of the previous episodes of the podcast, we've now got 2 episodes out. 3 episodes. Go and give those a watch or a listen, depending on your platform of choice. So I guess to wrap up nicely, we've got kind of one final little thing to discuss. And the one thing that I'd like to bring to the table is your rather lovely email that G-Rand brought to the table.
Oh, the comments and feedback from, so my granddad, angler,
seasoned angler,
been
borderline
fishing
expert
for a while. Hi, granddad. If you're watching, which hopefully you are.
Let's have a read.
I mean, some of it was like some nice comments as to...
But he put some little hints of stuff in there that he was like, this is the stuff that he finds interesting. And I was like, oh, you know what, that's quite nice.
Yeah, and if anything, okay, so he gave us some nice little feedback in terms of... And there was a comment that we didn't talk as much about the fish or how to fish as often, so, up until this point, which I think is worth commenting on. I think that's because if, something that's been brought up, I think that's something that we will do every now and then. Something we're both quite conscious of is a lot of, fishing content out there is really based on catching and just the result and the outcome of catching a fish. And the trouble is, if you don't catch, you sort of run out of things to talk about. So we want to try and make it a bit more just outside of specifically our captures. And for example, like we're going to start to do some videos in the future about, going fishing, and it won't just be about a standard turning up at a lake, seeing how you can catch, because I think there is definitely, a theme where some anglers become a bit paralyzed because if they turn up to a lake and don't catch, they think they've got a bad video when it's not, and there's definitely more you can do with it.
Yep. No, I mean, and I can assure everyone there is a couple of videos in our pipeline somewhere, TBC on when they're going to come out of, like vlog style things of me going fishing and not catching. So if you're not interested in fishing videos where you don't catch, avoid those ones and go to the ones where I do catch. But I still recommend going and have a watch.
You still get to watch Matt sort of like
just flail about on the lakeside.
It's still good value.
We're trying to just mix it up and do a good kind of broad range of stuff. But we'll touch on like how to fish and what to do and all of that kind of stuff at some point. But we're trying to, like, it will be very like isolated cases. If you're like, we're talking specifically about weedy lakes, it might be,
winter,
okay, well, how are we going to do that? Or winter, for example, yeah.
Yeah, another point you raised was a magnet on a cord. Could be a really useful fishing tool. So, for example, it came up because my Ridge Monkey bivvy light, bit of magnet or bit of metal slides down the top.
Oh!
So a potential tool to get it out would put it on a cord, and then you could use that magnet on a cord to maybe, if you drop, for example, what I did the other week, I'm going to say it, I'll be honest, I was putting a back lead on my line, thought it was on the line, wasn't, dropped it, and it just went straight vertically down into the water. Would have been great to get that out. Mini magnet fishing, and a game as well to keep you busy. So there was that point.
Okay, yep.
He'd also mentioned another point about power packs and solar panels. I guess you could that's something that, like, if you're doing really long-term fishing, would be something you could utilize.
I've seen quite a few people with like solar panels on the top of their bivvies powering their packs.
But he mentioned it like in terms of like he's watched a couple of like canal boat blogs, and I think the importance, what I at least took from that as well, was the other takeaways you can get from different sports and niches that work into fishing, like, because there's definitely other products or tools. For example, my favorite, the gooseneck, which isn't really a fishing honed product, but you can kind of get whether it's camping, for example, certain things just haven't really made their way to the being covered in camo world of fishing, but are amazing and used really frequently in different sort of sports and different hobbies that you can definitely sort of have some good takeaways from as well. So
nice.
But yeah, thank you though for the comments.
Thank you, G-Round.
Speaking of comments, please feel free to drop a comment below. We'll always, as you can see, you don't have to be my granddad to have your comment talked about, but it helps.
Family first though.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that pretty much concludes and wraps up today's episode. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. Please do feel free to check out our previous episodes. We've just had one go up about bait boats, good or bad. Find out, listen, and you'll find out our views and other views as well. But until the next episode, we'll catch you later.
Catch you later.